Hi. So today we are going to talk about the two biggest lies about speaking and time that I hear clients say out there. We were going to be talking about speaking feeling like an admin task rather than an opportunity, but actually this came up with a client and I just think it's such an important thing to talk about. So yesterday I 27 minutes with a client, and I'm not using that number just to grab your attention. I'm using that number because it's actually true. We had 27 minutes to write a whole company speech, and we did it with just 30 seconds to spare. It was a full speech. It was completely structured. It was ready to go. And the reason it was ready to go was because we had a framework to work with. So I want to tell you what that proved, right? If we can write a whole speech in 27 minutes, one that is good to go, structured, then you need to hear this, right? If you have ever said, I don't have time for talking, my business doesn't have time for it, I don't have time for it, or I'll just use that because I've used it before, this is really, really, really important. Because I think there's two really big time myths that we've all bought into. I know I certainly bought into it right back at the beginning. And we've bought into these two time myths that are honestly, they're just not true. They're just not. So myth number one is that preparing a talk takes too long. And myth number two is you really have to have a lot of time in front of your audience in order to make an impact. Again, just not true. They're both wrong, and they both could be potentially really, really costly for you and for your business. Costly in terms of not getting the visibility that you need, costly in not making the relationships that you want with either potential clients or strategic partners or with conference hosts, those kinds of things. So it can be really, really costly for our businesses, because people assume that it's going to take a huge amount of time to prepare a speech, to prepare a talk. Now, I don't know about you, but as a business owner, I know that if I believe that something's going to take me a really long time, if I've got to sit and go through loads of spreadsheets before my accountant meeting, I'm going to tend to put that to one side until it becomes really urgent, and then I kind of sort of rush through it and it's not great. Or, I'll just pretend that it's not there, and I do a kind of la 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 la, and I'll just kind of pretend it's not there until I really have to be faced with the time frame that says, right, you've got to do this thing now. So I know what it's like. I do get it. It happens to all of us, the best will in the world. Those tasks we think are going to take a long time, they get pushed to the bottom of the pile. But what does that mean if we're speaking, or we've got an opportunity to speak? And that could be on a podcast, it might be at a conference, it could be on a live like this, it could be at your local networking event. What tends to happen is that people will regurgitate something they've done before, or they show up and they kind of wing it. And they're like, well, I'll just talk about this sort of thing. And they wing it. Or they just say no. They say no to those opportunities that gets them visible. And all of those scenarios are really unhelpful. So doing what you've done before, it's likely that's not going to fit for this particular audience, because it may not be what they need to hear. So that starts to kind of come back into you telling them what you want to tell them, rather than creating something that they might need to hear or want to hear. Winging it means we're likely to kind of go down rabbit holes that perhaps we don't need to go down. It's really not going to demonstrate our expertise in the best way possible, unless you've been doing this for years and you've been actor trained and you know exactly how to hold the audience and tell stories. But even then, the likelihood of it being commercially impactful is pretty slim, unless you are incredibly lucky or incredibly good. Most often it means we just don't show up. So we say no. We say no to those opportunities, and we find reasons why it's not suitable for us, or we find other people who we think will be better than us and say, oh no, you should choose them. But obviously every time we do that, we're losing visibility and we're elevating somebody else's visibility at the same time, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if we're doing that consistently, then we are definitely going to be losing out as a business. We're not positioning ourselves as the authority that we really, really could be. So if we don't prepare, it just means it costs us in our business, and it costs us in two ways. So one, it costs you in the visibility and the perceived credibility when you speak, and that sense of you being an authority in your space. So those are extremely costly, and they're really quite hard to repair. They take a long time and a lot of effort to claw our way back to that perceived credibility. And it's really it's hard work, right? You don't want to be doing that, and it's not good for your business. And the other side of it is, if we are, spending time and recycling content and kind of like trying to make slide decks fit this particular talk, I've never really found anyone who's been able to do that effectively or efficiently. It always ends up taking you longer, because as you start to kind of go into the detail of it, you realise, oh, that doesn't fit, or I need to change this, and then there is always, pretty much always, a point where clients will say to me, oh God, I just wish I'd started again. It's like, well, yeah, actually, that's probably the faster way to do it most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. The most costly thing, though, for me, I think, is not saying the right thing to the audience and making sure that it's a really, really, really good fit. But what I want to point out here is that speed and efficiency and quality are not opposite things. You don't have to spend hours creating everything from scratch and doing everything. It doesn't have to be like that and feel like an onerous task, or it's not great. You can actually do things quickly and have a great quality speech. Absolutely, you can 100% have those two things. And the reason you can have those two things, or the way you can have those two things, is you've got to have a framework. You've got to have a framework that allows you to really quickly, really efficiently answer questions. Answer questions about the audience, answer questions about you, answer questions about what this has to achieve. If you've got that framework, then you can make decisions fast, and you can make effective decisions that position you as the authority, give you credibility, and have commercial viability with the audience that you're speaking to. It's not one thing or the other. So when I'm working with a client, I've got the framework, I've got the questions, I know how to guide them and take them down the path, and they have all their expertise. So that process is often just one of me listening, pulling out what I think, what I'm hearing, not what I think, but what I'm hearing is important, putting that through the framework, because that is the fastest way to get something really super powerful. Because that structure, what that structure does is it will create a really beautiful roadmap for the talk, so you know where you're starting, where you're going to, what each section is leading to, and then finally, for the commercial bit, what you're actually asking this audience. And that's really, really powerful, because if you are an experienced speaker and you're a confident speaker and you are not somebody who needs to have everything script literally word for word, I tend to discourage pretty much all of my clients from going down that route. You are not going to show up as an authority if you're scripted word for word, unless you're doing a TED talk. That's a completely different thing. However, roadmaps are really powerful. If you're an experienced speaker and you know your product and you know your audience, having a roadmap is pretty much all you're going to need on the day, and you can speak from that roadmap. And then that means you're really speaking from your heart, and you're allowing your personality to shine. You're allowing that connection with the audience, because you're not following a script. You're not looking at your notes on your slide deck or reading your notes from your note card, and you're not reading your notes inside your brain, which is what I see a lot of speakers do, because they've learned it, but it's not in them. So having a roadmap that has come out of using this framework is so much more powerful. And even if you're less experienced as a speaker, maybe you've not been out there as many times, maybe you aren't quite as experienced in front of perhaps audiences this size, what the roadmap does is give you a safety net. So you know exactly what's coming next. So very simply, using your slide deck or using some notes or a mind map or various other devices that we work with our clients with, you know exactly where you're going next. And usually once you've got that roadmap when you know where you're going next, you can talk. You can talk about that thing, because it's the thing that you do all of the time. Okay, so what were those myths? So number one, you have to have a lot of time to prepare for your talk. Just not true, right? You need a lot of time in front of an audience to actually make a difference, to have an impact on that audience. Also not true. So myth number one, we've pretty much busted that, right? 27 minutes, or 26 minutes and 30 seconds to write a full speech from beginning to end. So we had a beginning, we had a middle, we had an end. We were really clear about the intention. We were really clear about what we wanted the audience to do, how we wanted them to feel. We knew what information we were giving them. We knew what information we were saving for later. We knew everything about how we were going to emotionally lead the audience through this. And we even managed to get in a couple of guardrails about, it's not this thing here, which you may be concerned about. It's not this thing over here, but it is definitely this thing here. So we were able to make sure there was some psychological guardrails for the audience as well. So really powerful work. 27 minutes, beginning to end. Client was able to go away. They had the roadmap. They were able to deliver it. Sarah's talk, we had under 2 weeks. So she had to go and talk to a very, very resistant audience, highly resistant to what she was going to tell them. And we know that because she'd been doing it for quite a long time before we started working together. So in under 2 weeks, we had created from scratch a whole talk, a whole slide deck, and it had been rehearsed. So when she got there, she was able to get up and just deliver. So in under 2 weeks, we were able to prepare something really powerful. For an entire conference, we had 40 speakers. In under 3 months, we were able to create content and work on delivery for all 40 speakers in under 3 months. A really powerful work in a very short period of time. So you don't need heaps and heaps and heaps of time to be able to write with really, really good content. Just to mention, with those 40 keynote speakers, we had an hour for content and an hour for delivery, apart from 1 or 2 very, very key speakers which we really needed to get their speeches beautifully nuanced. So working with internal comms, literally 2 hours, and we were able to create incredible content that had the engagement for the attendees was in the high 90s every single day of this event. You do not need hours and hours and hours of time to create really good content. You do need a process. Now, the second thing that we've spoken about today is having a lot of time to make an impact. Now, I just want to blow that right out of the water, because I have clients who have had literally 2.5 minutes to give like whole company updates, and they've made an impact. Sarah, who I mentioned, she had 10 minutes with that resistant audience. 10 minutes, that was all. From beginning to end, from walking up on the stage to sitting back down in her chair, she had 10 minutes. That is not a long amount, that's not a big amount of time to actually change not just somebody's thoughts and feelings, but to change their actions on stage. And she did it. She did an incredible job, so much so that she had so many people coming to talk to her afterwards. She didn't get to eat because the queue of people just never went away. She's been asked to write a textbook, collaborate on a textbook, because the power of what she delivered was so impressive. Andrew has got 15 minutes to sell an audience on an entire concept, and his speech is structured so beautifully that he is going to be able to do that without doubt. You don't need a huge amount of time to be able to make a difference to the audience, providing that you have got a structure, that you've got a roadmap, that both of those things, that process, that framework has done all the heavy lifting, and you are talking to the audience about the thing that they really, really need to hear right now. If you haven't, then they're going to tune out and start thinking about what's for dinner, or the fact that they need to book their kids' dentist's appointment, or whatever, but they're not going to be with you. So the length of time that you have in front of your audience is irrelevant as long as you are speaking to what they really need to hear. So if you are going on podcasts, if you are on a panel, if you are doing lives, if any of those things, having a framework, having an authority talk, you can pull bits of your content out and use it in those moments, and position yourself as an authority, position yourself as the person to go to, demonstrate your expertise just in literally 2.5, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, however long you have. But you don't have to have keynote speeches on huge stages to actually make your speaking work for you and work for your business. It's just not true. So I'm really sorry if that's annoying, but it really, really isn't. The reason that it works, the reason that we're able to do this, so two things. One, we're able to create the speeches really quickly, and that people do not need a long time on stage is because we have a very clear structure. We have a framework and we have a structure. The structures change for different kinds of talk. Not every talk is structured the same, but we know what kinds of structures are going to work in what kinds of environments. So, is this an inspirational talk? Is this an educational talk? Is this more of a we cannot stay here kind of talk? Or is this we're in an incredible place and now we want to accelerate what's going on? This is how we see the future. What is it? Is it a visionary talk? Is it you've misunderstood this thing and this is what's holding you back kind of talk? So depending on the kind of talk it is will depend on the structure, and it will change where we put the stories or where we don't put the stories, or where we put the information or not put the information, how we do the call to action, where we put that request. All that kind of stuff will change depending on the kind of talk that we are creating, and that will definitely vary in terms of the storytelling. What kind of storytelling are we doing and where do those stories fit? So the structure will change, but we know what structures work in what particular areas. So we can help you very, very quickly figure out what to say, how to say it, and when to say it, which is absolutely critical, right? It doesn't need to take forever. So with a framework, we know what the questions are, we know what to ask you, we know how to kind of get down into the nitty gritty, to get underneath the sort of surface conversation that you might be tempted to have with your audience and help you get right down into the bottom bit, into the nitty gritty. And it means we can build it fast and we can build it well. And that's really important. It's not fast and not well, and it's not well but takes a long time. It's both. We can build it fast and we can build it really, really, really well, so that your audience remembers you and acts on the things that you've been talking about. So I wouldn't recommend everybody write their speech in 27 minutes. It was pretty exciting, 27 minutes, but it was really fun, and what we produced was really powerful. So generally with most people, I'd say we work over a 6 to 12 week process. 6 to 8 weeks is probably the most common, because usually when people come to us, they've got a particular speech that they have to deliver in a particular time frame. So that is not uncommon. And actually the amount of work that has to go on in between times is actually surprisingly little. So between 4 and 6 hours of coach contact time, and then whatever amount of time that it takes to create this and edit the slide deck. So really, you can produce something pretty powerful in a relatively short space of time. So I hope I have helped bust those two myths. You do not need heaps and heaps of time to write an incredible speech, and you do not need hours and hours in front of your audience to genuinely make a difference. If you've structured your talk well, if you are talking about the things that your audience really, really needs to hear, and if you have very clear calls to action. If you already have a talk and you're out there and you're using it and you're getting lots of lovely feedback, but it is not necessarily creating the commercial impact that you'd like, you're not necessarily getting those calls afterwards to say, hey, really would like to talk about how we can work together because I really need what you're offering, then I would really encourage you to use our talk diagnostic, which you can access. I'm going to drop the link down below. It takes about 2 minutes and 37 seconds, really not very long at all. And it will give you a score for how well you're performing over the 5 areas that we think is really, really important in terms of how you're showing up and how you're constructing your speech. And it will also give you 3 areas that you can improve the next time that you do your talk. So really powerful, really quick diagnostic. The other thing, if you've been listening to this and thinking, oh my Lord, I really need to work on my talk because I really want my talk to be working as hard for my business as I am. I really want that commercial impact. I really want those strategic partnerships. I really want to be developing serious conversations with people in the room about how we can work together in the future, as in new clients, and you want people to be able to refer you so that they go, you need this, you should go and work with Emma because she's really great at this thing. So if you want those things and you're not getting them in your talk yet and you're ready to make a change, then DM me, because we have some space we've got 1 space left in June and 1 space left in July. Now if you do your talk work now and we start pretty swiftly and we get on with it, then you could be ready by the end of July. which means by September, October, November, which is the conference season, that new season when everybody's like kick-started back into work after the summer break, then you're going to be ready to go. If you decide to wait and do it in September, then the likelihood is by the time we finish, so that would be sort of mid-October or end of October, you've kind of missed conference season. You've kind of missed that, by the time we get to November, people are starting to think about festive parties. You're not really going to be getting many opportunities until January 2027. Just have a think. Do you need to get on with it now because you've got to maximise Q4, or can you wait until 2027? If that's the case, DM me, let me know, and we can have a conversation about how I can help you create that authority talk, that one that's really super, super powerful. Okay, I hope that's been useful. Just please, if you don't take away nothing else from this, you do not need heaps of time to create an incredible speech. You do need a framework, and you do not need hours in front of your audience to make a significant difference to them and a commercial difference to your organisation. You need a really well structured, commercially viable talk, and then things really start to change. Okay, bye for now, and I will see you tomorrow.